Have you ever passed by a child late at night and wondered what story their tired eyes are silently telling? The streets were dimly lit. The air was heavy with the scent of smoke and dust. It was close to midnight, and most children were asleep in warm beds. But not this child. A little boy, no older than 10, stood barefoot on the corner of a busy street. In his small hands, he clutched a bundle of fading flowers. His hair messy, clothes torn, face pale from exhaustion. Yet his eyes, they carried something deeper than sadness. They carried survival. He walked from car to car, knocking softly on tinted windows. Some drivers ignored him. Some waved him away. Others rolled their windows down only to shout, "Go home, kid." But he didn't stop, because to him, these flowers weren't just flowers. They were food. They were rent. They were his only hope. And then, flashing red and blue lights appeared. A police car pulled up. The boy froze. His tiny hands trembled, the flowers slipping slightly from his grip. Because he had been warned before. Selling on the streets was illegal. And tonight he was caught. The officer stepped out of the car. Tall, stern, uniform pressed. The boy's heart pounded so loud he thought the whole street could hear it. People walking by slowed down. Some whispered. Others shook their heads. Everyone thought they knew how this would end. The officer's voice was sharp. "Hey, you, what are you doing out here this late?" The boy's lips quivered. He lowered his head. His small voice broke the silence. "Please, sir, I just want to sell these flowers so my little sister can eat." For a moment, there was silence. The officer's expression was unreadable. The boy braced himself for handcuffs, for punishment, for another night of shame. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. The officer knelt down. His voice softened. "What's your name, son?" The boy whispered, "Diego." "Where are your parents, Diego?" Diego's eyes filled with tears. "My father left. My mother, she's sick. I'm the oldest. If I don't sell, we don't eat." And in that moment, the officer felt something shift inside him. Because this wasn't crime. This wasn't mischief. This was survival. The officer looked at the flowers, then at Diego's trembling hands. Instead of grabbing the boy's arm, he reached into his own pocket. He pulled out his wallet, and right there, in front of strangers, in front of cars, in front of the night, he bought every single flower. But he didn't stop there. He handed Diego a small wad of cash and said, "Take this. Feed your sister. And tomorrow, meet me at the station. We'll talk." Diego's eyes widened. He couldn't believe it. The officer wasn't arresting him. He was helping him. The boy's lips trembled as he whispered, thank you, sir." But as Diego walked away, something gnawed at his heart. Because he knew one night of kindness wouldn't solve everything. His sister was still sick. His mother was still weak. And tomorrow, he would still wake up poor. Yet deep inside, a seed of hope had been planted. And the officer? He couldn't sleep that night either. Because he realized sometimes the law isn't enough. Sometimes humanity must lead. But here's where the story takes a turn. The next day, Diego showed up at the station, clutching the few coins left from the night before, eyes filled with both fear and hope. What the officer did next would not only change Diego's life, but it would shock everyone in the department. And it would force the community to confront an uncomfortable question. When a child is punished for surviving, who really failed them? The next morning came slowly. Sunlight filtered through cracked windows of a small, run-down apartment. Inside, Diego quietly placed a piece of bread next to his little sister's bedside. She was fragile, her breaths shallow. Diego kissed her forehead gently before whispering, "I'll be back soon, I promise." With trembling hands, he clutched the money the officer had given him the night before. And then, he walked toward the police station. Each step felt heavier than the last. Would the officer arrest him after all? Would he be punished? Or would he be helped? Diego didn't know. But hope, fragile as glass, kept him walking. At the station, the officer sat at his desk. Paperwork piled high, phones ringing, but his mind was elsewhere. He hadn't stopped thinking about Diego all night. He knew one act of kindness wasn't enough. This child needed more. A lifeline. A chance. And then, the door creaked open. Diego stepped in. His small frame looked even smaller in the big room. Every officer turned to look. Some smirked. Others frowned. To them, he was just another street kid. But to one officer, he was a story worth changing. Diego, the officer said softly, waving him over. You came. Diego nodded nervously. Yes, sir, like you asked. The officer leaned forward. Son, I don't want to arrest you. I want to help you. But I need to know the truth. How long have you been doing this? Diego's eyes welled with tears. Since my mother got sick, almost a year. If I don't sell, my sister goes hungry. Sometimes I go hungry so she can eat. Silence filled the room. Other officers shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away, because in that moment, the truth was louder than any siren. The officer made a decision. He stood up, and in front of the entire department, he said words no one expected. This boy doesn't need punishment. He needs protection. He needs us. Whispers broke out. A few officers scoffed. One muttered, not our job. But the officer didn't back down. He looked at Diego and then at his colleagues. Maybe the law says arrest him, but my heart says save him. And then he did something even bolder. He invited Diego and his sister into his own home. Yes, a police officer, a man sworn to uphold the law, chose compassion over protocol. That night, for the first time in years, Diego and his sister ate a warm meal. The little girl smiled weakly, her eyes lighting up as she tasted real food. Is this what family feels like? She whispered. Diego couldn't answer. Tears rolled down his cheeks, because deep inside, he knew this was more than just dinner. This was hope reborn. But not everyone was happy. At the station, the officer faced backlash. Why bring a street kid into your home? They questioned. What if it backfires? But the officer stood firm. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the mold. And if saving a child is wrong, then maybe the rules need to change. Word spread across the town. Neighbors heard about Diego. Some offered clothes. Others donated food. And slowly, a community that once looked away began to care. Weeks passed. Diego's mother received medical help. His sister regained strength. And Diego? He went back to school. No more selling flowers at midnight. No more begging at car windows. For the first time, he was allowed to dream. And the officer? He didn't just save a boy. He sparked a movement. Because when the town saw what compassion could do, they began asking themselves, how many more Diegos are out there? How many children are punished for surviving? While the world looks away. Years later, a young man stood on a stage, dressed in a clean suit, his voice steady, his heart strong. It was Diego. He looked out at the audience and said, once, I was just a boy selling flowers at midnight. Hungry, afraid, alone. But one man, one officer, chose to see me not as a criminal, but as a child worth saving. And because of him, I'm standing here today, alive, educated, and determined to make sure no child is left behind. The crowd erupted into applause. Tears streamed down faces, because his story was no longer just his. It was a lesson for everyone. Life will always test us with rules, with judgment, with easy excuses to turn away. But the greatest measure of who we are is not found in how strictly we enforce the law, but in how deeply we choose to love. One act of kindness can transform a life. One moment of compassion can break the cycle of despair. And sometimes, choosing humanity over protocol is the bravest thing we can do. So when you see someone struggling, remember Diego. Remember the flowers. And remember that you might be the only light in someone else's darkness. Because the greatest law we can live by is love. What would you have done if you were that officer? Let me know in the comments. Don't just watch. Take the lesson with you. Subscribe for more powerful stories that turn pain into wisdom.